Hey everybody, my name is Ryan Bolton with Synergy One Lending. I'm a local mortgage expert, and today is the Clear to Close podcast, which we have special guest Adam Snow, who's the County Commissioner of Washington County. So I appreciate you coming on the show today and talking about what's going on in Washington County. So what kind of started this whole thing is I posted on Southern Utah's Facebook page called St. George Word of Mouth. It's a great page. A lot of people are on that one. It's one of the bigger ones. And I posted a question of why you wouldn't buy in Washington County. And of course, prices were one of them, or payments or prices, something like that. But the most common one I got after that was water. Everybody was just saying, I'm not going to buy because of the water concerns. And I was really surprised at that. And because I've learned and I've been here long enough to see what the county's been doing with water, with conservancy, with development, that type of stuff. So I thought, let's go right to the source, the guy that's got the boots on the ground the most when it comes to water in Washington County. So I wanted to invite Adam, and he was gracious enough to pleasure our show here with his face and his voice. So tell me a little bit about what's happened and changed with water in Washington County.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for doing this. This is by far and away the number one question I get. And it was the reason, not to get political on it, but I didn't really want to be a county commissioner. I've said that several times to people. I don't really want to be one now. It wasn't on my dream job list. But when it came to water, because of what I had done for the last 6 years as Congressman Stewart's director for U.S. Congress here, I was the guy the county called for help on some of these issues. And so I just had a lot of intimate knowledge with it. I knew the connections and the landscape of it. And so it's one of the two main reasons why I ran for office. And it's a big nut to crack. I'm not going to lie. We're in a difficult situation. But the problem is, so I'm glad that you get these questions, and I'm really glad to be able to educate people and to let them know what's going on. Because we get everything from all over the spectrum from, you know what, this is a big lie, right? Like there's tons of water. Is everybody just scaring us? And honestly, no, that's not true. We're not just scaring people, and there really is a water problem, water management problem. All the way to the other end of, oh my goodness, I built a house 3 or 4 years ago in the Washington Fields, and I don't know if there's going to be water for it next year. We're not that far either. So the first thing to talk about is first and foremost is to say that when we're talking about water, we're talking about new water. Okay, if you have water for your business or your home right now, excuse me, getting over a little bit of a cold there, so I may cough a couple times. If you have a business or a home right now that is being served, there is sufficient water to continue to serve you, and you don't need to worry. When you go turn on the tap, short of some catastrophic event or something minor like, the pipe burst on your road this week and we had to go fix it. But otherwise, there's water. There's water to provide for the current demand right now. And that's managed by the state, because all water, actually, every drop of water in the state of Utah is owned by the state of Utah. The rest of us have, even if you have a priority right on a farm or land that you own, the rest of us are you have a priority right to use the state's water.
Yeah,
so
it's a right to use state, right?
That's the way the law works out. So because of that, the state manages very, very closely through multiple agencies under the Department of Natural Resources on how we use water. Are we using too much? Are we mining our water, which means we're pulling out more from the aquifers than we're putting back in every year? And we watch that really, really closely. The engineers do, so that we're actually putting more water in, or at least as much water as we've pulled out. And there's ways to hydrology to try and to measure all that, right? So that's the landscape. We don't need to stress about whether you're going to have water today. So if somebody wanted to go buy a home today and say, I don't know if I'm going to have water next year. No, if you can buy the home, if it's an existing home right now, it's already being served, great. If it's a new construction, sorry. If it's a new construction, the builder can go and then do will serve letters, like they used to, but he can go and get a connection from the Water Conservancy District or the city, wherever the home happens to be. And as long as they provide that connection, great, you're fine. So I wouldn't have that as a reason not to buy or build because you worry about whether water is going to be there in your tap. The bigger issue, so then the next issue is people say, well, what, I'm here now. And so I think we need to stop all the growth. And that's an easy one. We're just building too fast, too much. And now, look, I understand the complaint. My family was the first ones here. There's a reason why it's called Snow Canyon, right?
Yep.
And so I always...
it's not because it snows there.
No. And a lot of people are like, well, it's because there's white rocks up at the top, right? No.
Yep.
But the whole... I say that not as a, hey, we're better, or anything, but because we can say, well, the easiest way to argue against hey, it's time to stop all growth completely. Some of us would like it to go back to when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
We had farms on 900 South. I mean, it was, we've still got fields out in the Washington Fields area. And I remember, man, this was a very different town back then, but you can't go back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to doze the things down and plant alfalfa again. It's just not going to, it's not going to happen. So as far as the growth goes, people say we need to shut off all the growth because we're running out of water. And so I have two answers to that. One is that I ask them when they moved here. And when they say, well, let's see, 2012. So could we have done that in 2011?
Yeah.
Is that a fair comment? How about 2010? Could we have shut it off then?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people had those same concerns then. They had the same concerns. If you look at journals and government records in the 80s, they had serious concerns about water. There were building moratoriums in the 60s and 70s because we were out of water. The story of the West, and cut me off at any time here, but sorry, once I get going.
No, hey, that's why I brought you.
I like water. So. The story of the West is the story of adaptation to limited water resources.
So true.
That is it. The city of Los Angeles, you can look at a presentation from when they were, I'm going to get the dates wrong, but early 1900s, right? The LA River was a trickle. I mean, you could walk across it and never get your feet wet.
Wow.
Because you could just step on the stones that were, the river rocks in there. Now, it's not a whole lot different from that today, but you've got, 20 million people in the surrounding area?
Yeah.
That's a huge city. Now, they adapted in different ways that we can't do anymore. They stole a river.
Yeah.
Like literally just dug a new river and dammed it off and it redirected to them. We don't do that so much anymore.
Yeah.
But the whole point being that we adapt to water scarcity. And so,
well, especially like you said, Las Vegas, Utah, the driest parts of the country, the driest states in the area, they've had to do a better job of capturing, recapturing, reusing the water. And I've been here since, like you said, 05. I hate to have 04 be when they cut me off and wasn't able to grow here. And so much of what we've been able to do has been such a wonderful reason to move to St. George. We've been discovered. We're not going to get undiscovered. I remember I've been here obviously not nearly as long as you guys have, but it was how exciting it was for certain restaurants to come into town where you didn't have to go to Salt Lake or Vegas or other places just to get restaurants or foods or services or goods, that type of thing. And St. George is so new and vibrant and so many wonderful things. But I remember I was blown away at how much water wasn't being recaptured or reused or multiple use, especially with a lot of golf courses. And then you'll have, my office is right here by Southgate. Sprinklers will go on. I'm sure people call all the time, why are the sprinklers on in the middle of the day? Not realizing that you can't use that water for anything but that. And that helps with the economy. That helps with green. That helps with air control. There's so many things to have green space as long as you're using the water in a correct way that you can't use for anything else anyway. Yep. So it's a great way to be able to use it for those things. How many calls do you get when people see that the golf course, is that probably the biggest complaint of water use is golf courses?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. So now there's a lot of partnerships, and you just hit on so many good points. There's a lot of partnerships here in that the county really has more of an oversight and facilitator role, because only about 5% of our residents live in the unincorporated parts of the county. So the cities have a huge role in a lot of this. They are able to grant permits and plats and new homes and businesses to come in and guarantee that they're going to provide water from them. But all of the cities now are getting their water from the Water Conservancy District, which is countywide. They have a role countywide. They don't play much of a role like up Vail, Diamond, Dameron, Vail. Those all have little private water companies that they kind of work with a little bit, but they don't run necessarily. Enterprise is the same way. But for the rest of the county, the Water Conservancy District is the one that's providing the water. And their job is to make sure that there's water in your faucet when you go to turn on the tap. So what you just said is, well, I guess the second part of what I was talking about earlier is, one, can we just cap all the growth the year before everybody else got here?
Yeah.
Because it shows a little bit of the hypocrisy on this, right? But the complaint is not unfounded, right? So people saying, right, but we can only grow so much. So why are we still building? And the truth is that if we have this much water available, we're right about here. So why are we still building homes? Because there's still some water available. And if you've got land and you've got, and you're a developer or you're a builder or a private homeowner and you want to go build and you have the land and there's water available, under state law, we're going to provide you water. We can't just say, you know what, I don't really like your project or I don't like you. And so we're just not going to, even though there's water available. Well, that's why we have private property rights. And so people are allowed to do with the land that they want according to zoning and, all of that. But that's why we're still building. We're not out of water yet, but we're getting close of new water. Again, I was talking new water.
Yep.
And so how do we get, if we've got that very small margin now, so the camera, there you go. You can see we got that very small margin now. How do we increase it? And what you just said is exactly what we're doing.
And is there people not wanting the increase is another way of just capping the growth? Is it something like, Absolutely. Okay, we don't want it to go any higher than this, so we got to keep it at that. So that's a reason to just say, okay. And then is there a concern, obviously, if we have a couple of really bad years, does that top drop? And that's where people start saying, okay, or is that really a number that we feel is pretty safe, that we've hit kind of what we know what that number is? We know what that number is. And I'm not going to say that there's no possibility that could happen, but it's not like we're flirting with the line. I mean, if we're getting where we're here and now all of a sudden the available water, assuming no new growth, the available water has dropped, something catastrophic has happened. Okay. That it will be causing many more issues. Power. Okay. Lots of, like, the Colorado River dried up. Yeah. Okay. Right. That kind of a level of catastrophe. And people say, well, it is drying up. If you look back at the geologic record, the Colorado River is the most consistent source of water west of the Mississippi River over thousands and thousands of years. So it's pretty consistent. It'd be like the Rockies not getting any snow. I mean, it's such a large front of weather that so much of the weather patterns that have to hit the Rocky Mountains just coming off the Pacific, that's kind of what it hits. That's why there's these dry areas between the Rocky Mountains and all the way to west or East Texas. That whole, I watched a great video on YouTube that kind of talked about how those weather patterns and how the East is always trying to get rid of water. They're trying to aqueduct it. They're trying to get it back to rivers, streams, back to the ocean. Like, you go to Florida, it's amazing how quick a rainstorm and then all the water's just gone. It's back to the ocean. Now, obviously, it's right there by it, but I was just blown away at how they design water to get back to the ocean. We're designing it to capture every drop wherever we can and redirect it to where it needs to be. And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember I moved here, I remember seeing a stat about the Lake Powell Pipeline and some of the water usage that we have, that we literally use using more water than even Las Vegas, which, like you said, LA, Las Vegas, there's a lot more people there. Now, we have more agricultural. We have more reasons why the water is getting used than maybe a big city like a Las Vegas, but population, we're not even close to the population of a Las Vegas or an LA or something like that. So did you ever see, is that skewed a little bit, or is that wrong as far as how much water we were using before the reclaiming and some of the reusage of the water? So part of it is that we're not using the same math. So they use a different formula than we do. Okay. I love stats. You can manipulate them. We're working on that right now so that we all count the same way. Okay. Here's the easiest way to say it. So if you have a shower, if you're taking a shower, let's say you use 25 gallons of water, your body may have absorbed a tiny little bit, but essentially you're recapturing all of that water, right? You've got 25 gallons have been poured over your head. It goes in the drain. Las Vegas will treat that, put it back into the system, and that's a net loss of zero. Right? Okay. Yeah. Because I get to 25 gallons to go put back into the system again. So they count that as we haven't used any water. You've used water, but we've recaptured it all, and so we get to keep using it. Okay. Utah doesn't do it that way. We say you use 25 gallons, we put it back in the system, we treated it. Now we can use the 25 gallons again. So you take another shower. Now you've used 50 gallons. Okay. Okay. And they're counting it as zero, and we're counting it as 50. Gotcha. Okay. That's the most simplified way to describe how
how we're just using different math. And so we're trying to get all on the same page. Now we have been a higher water user in some years. But what you're talking about is, and what you said just a moment ago, one, the Lake Powell Pipeline is first of all, I think is the worst named project in the history of the world.
Sure.
Because everybody thinks that we're just dropping another straw in a glass that's already empty, right? And that's not the case. And I love to go to Lake Powell. I think it's beautiful. Anybody who's been there recently realizes that is a very, very shallow lake right now. What we do, actually, it should be called the Flaming Gorge Pipeline, because the point of diversion of the water is we release additional water out of Flaming Gorge into the Green River, into the Colorado, into Lake Powell. We account for evaporation and loss along the way and usage along the way. And then we pump that less amount out from Lake Powell over to Washington County. So this is Utah's water. We're not stealing it from somebody else. These are water rights that Utah already has that they're not using right now. And this is the place that we'd like to use them the most. There are some legal challenges to that. Upper basin, lower basin. There's the law of the river, the Colorado Compact, that all 7 states that touch the Colorado drainage system that we're all privy to or parties to. I mean, so there's some legal issues and hurdles that we're working on. But that's where we get the water. It's just a lot easier to do it through the natural rivers, and there's a benefit to the ecology and wildlife and everything along the way, and recreation. We get to have fun with it. But it's a lot easier to pipe it 150 miles than it is the 450 miles if you were to go from Flaming Gorge through the state, and it's not a direct, you can't go as the crow flies. You got to follow mountain lines and canyons and everything. And
what would that cost, a pipeline all the way from Flaming Gorge? When, like you said, there's already a natural pipeline that's getting it to Lake Powell. So that's I didn't know that.
So that's where the water comes. So essentially think of it, we fill Lake Powell up a little more, and then we pull it back down a little. So that's and where the water would come, the outlet and everything for the pipe. If there's no water in that pipe, there's no water in Lake Powell.
Yeah, it's designed to be low enough to where it's going to capture. It's basically, Now, and I have heard there's issues with getting it to St. George. There's been issues around the Indian reservations, and some of that stuff has added to the cost of that. And I know my water bill has a diversion for that, or they've reused it for other project kind of thing. So where is the budget for that? Is that still, and I remember the cost of it was lower. Obviously the cost has just gone up like crazy on that project as it gets delayed or gets approved and that type of thing. So is there updates on any kind of ETA or budget, or is it even still a pipe dream, or is it actually going to happen? How about that?
Good name.
It's called the Pipe Dream Pipe Project.
So at some point in the future, and we're going to get into what we're doing right now, but at some point in the future, we will need an additional source of water, that one or from somewhere else, because we will have just used every drop. We are the largest community and one of the only communities in the entire country that of this size that is solely dependent on a single source of water, which is the Virgin River. And if we're
Virgin
honest with
Stream?
ourselves, the Virgin is a river only in the loosest sense of the term, right?
Yeah.
You go back east and they talk about rivers, and the mighty Mississippi is a river.
Yeah.
The Columbia is a river, right?
Yeah.
This is a trickle.
Yeah.
But it's the best we got. And so you've got 200,000 people almost and 6.2 million visitors a year relying on that little tiny trickle and a little bit of some wells and some springs and stuff that we've developed, obviously, but it's all in that same drainage. So we will need an additional source of water. The Lake Powell Pipeline, there, like I said, there's multiple legal and kind of treaties with other states that we need to overcome. And so I'm not are we still working on it? Yes. Are we putting all of our eggs in that basket? No. And so if and when that happens to come around, it'd be wonderful for us. In the meantime, go ahead.
I saw one argument that said, well, there's a fish, you get people that get anti-wildlife or anti-PETA, those types of people. I said, well, there's a fish that has a higher priority on us than humans downstream that would take priority. And I said, well, no, they're not going to allow that, because like you said, it's already a percentage of water we're supposed to get that we're not using, first of all. And second of all, it's low enough that if that pipeline doesn't have water in it, then all of Lake Powell is empty. We're not talking about something where it's high enough to where you have to constantly move down, because you've seen like Lake Mead and some of these pipelines that are now sticking up out of the dirt because of Mead. And Mead's a whole nother issue. It's just a horrible container for water, where Lake Powell isn't because of the rock and the sediments and the different things there. But that's really interesting to know that Flaming Gorge is really one of the feeders to that. That is a Utah thing. That's something I didn't know. I hope that educates everybody, because that's exciting to know that that's another place where water can get to Lake Powell.
Yeah. And that's it should be the Flaming Gorge Pipeline. And maybe someday we'll rename it, because that's, everybody, the Lake Powell Pipeline's horrible. What do you think about the Flaming Gorge Pipeline? I'm a fan. I like that one.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
So the battle of naming at this point.
Yeah, no kidding. So eventually we will need that secondary source of water. In the meantime, so you say, okay, Adam, thanks. You've laid this out. We've got a little bit of water. We're not able to grow for a ton longer, though. So what do? Do we just cap it? And so before I lay out exactly what we're doing, the capping is a problem for everybody who lives here or would like to. Now, I have 3 little kids. I want them to be able to stay around when they get older. I was glad that my parents, I've got siblings that live here with their families. My grandparents lived here. So even though my family has been here for 150 years, 170 years now, I wouldn't be able to live here right now. It's not like, you're grandfathered in because your family was here early. No, I had to buy a home, right? After graduate school, I had to go find. So we want people to be able to live here. We want the services, like you mentioned, the stores, the restaurants, the things that provide a good quality of life. Well, in order to do that, you've got to have people that work in those stores and those restaurants. That maintain the roads and fix the potholes, and police officers and firefighters and ambulance. And
that's not just water; it's power, it's sewer, it's gas, it's all that. Yeah.
And so we have to be honest with ourselves and say, yes, we want this quality of life, and realize that with that quality of life comes that other people are need to live here as well to help provide that for us. And so, and that they have a good quality of life as well. So we look at, we look at what can we do today to maintain that we don't become, if we were just to cap off tomorrow and say there is no new growth, well, you still have water in your pipes, right? So you think prices are high now? If anybody who understands basic economics, if you have demand is still really high and you artificially suppress the supply, there's only one direction for the price equilibrium to go, which is straight up, right? So we will if we were to do that, we would make Malibu and Park City look like the slums because the demand is still high. Everybody wants to come here. Everybody wants to be here. Your price will nobody will care about your home. Billionaires will come and buy your, or the incredibly wealthy will come and buy your home because they want your water. They can doze your home and build what they want. That's what they do in Malibu. Old home. That's where I went to grad school. That's why I brought it up. But an old home that nobody liked. Well, but you're right on the beach. It has a premium for real estate. So for a postage stamp of land, roughly the size of this office, where you were 6 inches from your neighbor's wall, right, or maybe shared a wall. $6 million to buy that. Then they would tear it down and spend $20 million. It'd be a $35 million project. And people did it all the time because it was a scarce resource. It was a place they wanted to live, and they would spend that kind of money to come in there. So if you want to live here, imagine what your property rate is going to be if we were to just artificially cap that. And most people don't quite think it that far through. They say, I'm here now. I'm happy. Let's just keep it as it is. That's just not a free market economy.
And we really saw a glimpse of that in the fact that it wasn't like loans were bad that were driving up prices. It wasn't like people were pricing the home wrong. People were saying, I'll pay you $50,000 more because I want the house. I want to live in that area. I can work remote now, so I don't have to work in LA, or I don't have to work in some of these areas because remote working became such a big thing, and St. George got so discovered. I mean, it's a wonderful place to live. It flat is. I mean, Zion National Park, Zion for all the people that are outside of the area, Zion has grown as one of the better parks in the whole country, and it's so close. I mean, we have everything but the ocean. I've told people you got almost everything within just an hour of here is just amazing. And people have really discovered this part of southern Utah when they realize, oh, it's not the snow or the Wasatch Front, that type of stuff. It's kind of a combination of a maybe Arizona kind of climate, a Vegas kind of climate, but with more colors, more greenery, more outdoor activities.
Yeah.
And the more and more you got Ironmans, marathons, World Senior Games, it just has put us on the map. That's going to be very hard. Like you said, even if you could cap it, now you're talking about taking away people's rights to use their property the way they want to use it, or permits that are already done. So that's not, like I said, that's not an answer either, is capping it. So it is using the water better, or being able to tap into resources that we already have there that we just aren't using fully.
And really, if people were honest, they don't want the cap, because that would deteriorate your quality of life and kind of ruin the whole reason why you're here and you want it capped, right? Yep. So it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy of destruction. Yeah. So really then it comes to the crux of the question is, so what do we do if we have only got this much margin between what we have to build and for businesses and homes and what we're, how much more we've got to go? We're looking at several years still, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a blink of an eye. And so luckily there is not only just a plan, but a plan that has been in the works for a long time now. We're well down the road. Obviously we would like more time. We'd like more breathing room, but there are very smart people working on this. And so it comes down to reuse and secondary water. So all water in Washington County is not created equal. There is very good, wonderful culinary water. And then if you drive, let's see, where's some good examples? There's one in Washington City where there's a gutter that just always flows. It's like, my goodness, we're just wasting water. You couldn't drink that water. Yeah. Now, could you treat it enough? And you can drink it today. Could you treat it enough? And sure. But that the cost would be an expensive gallon of water to drink. Yeah. If you come down, Skyline Drive off of right below the Dixie Rock, right? Okay. There's always water seeping up between those rocks. Yeah, right. And that's just occurring naturally, right? But to try and recapture that water, and most of that water has incredibly high dissolved solids, lots of sulfur and other minerals or things in it. And so you can't really use it. It costs so much to get it to drinking quality that it's really not economically viable to do so. Right. So then we look at, when we talk about secondary water, that's what we're talking about, that water that's not really good for culinary uses or for clean business uses. And then we say, what else can we do with it? So I'm just going to say secondary and reuse water, kind of lumping them into one category, although they are separate. So the way we get over this hurdle of, until we get a new water source, limited water right now, so how do we bridge that gap, is to say we need to treat every single drop of water that we have in this county and use it as many times as possible. Okay. And that's what other places have done better than we have. And so we have the capacity right now through Ash Creek Special Service District, kind of on the east side of the county. St. George has a great treatment facility here. Yep. We can treat every drop of water. That is not a problem. So you use it, in your home, in your business, we recapture it, goes into the sewer, recapture it, we treat it. We could treat all of that water and make it culinary quality, right? And there are places that take sewage water and they will re-drink it. And you actually wouldn't know, you'd never know. I mean, that's kind of off-putting for a lot of people, but you would never know. Okay. But we don't need to do that because we do 60% of our water in Washington County is used outside the home. And so what we can do is treat it to a quality that's not necessarily drinking level, but is perfectly fine for landscaping, for agriculture, for use outside, and then we trade you for it. So we say, okay, you're using culinary water outside right now on your lawn or on your garden or your plants, your fruit trees, whatever it might be. Why don't we give you lower quality water that would be just fine for those plants, and we're going to take your culinary water. But that 60% of our water is outside the home. So we're talking about a massive amount. If we can even trade you for a portion of it, all of a sudden we've taken that really thin margin and we've made it a lot bigger. And the homeowner doesn't care. I'm putting this water on the grass. Who cares?
And I think Desert Color is one of the few that has the two different lines essentially going to that whole project to be able to make sure that what water's going to what, the fire hydrants, the certain water sources that need to have access to don't need to be drink quality or shower quality, that type of thing. So
many of the developments, especially Washington Fields along the Southern Parkway, like you said, Desert Color is one of them. Most of all the new developments, actually all of them. So the cities all got together with the county. We held a water summit about a year ago, and we said, look, we've all got to be on the same page. You can't, if you're a city that says, hey, come here, build, use whatever you want, water you want, we'll have a big party every day. Everybody's going to run to your city, but then you'll be using up all of the water that's a finite resource for the rest of us as well. So we all have to play in the same level here. And so conservation was a big part of that. And they're reasonable conservation measures. Maybe the time you can still build a home, but maybe the time has passed where you're going to have a 3-acre sprawling lawn because it just.
I'm amazed at how much of that you see in an area that is more desertscape and more dry and that type of stuff. And you see some other parts of the world that they do a different use of their land, whether it's gardens or other food sources and stuff. And yet we just have all this grass you never walk on, use, never do anything with.
Yeah. So we all the cities in the county got together and we all said we're going to do away with that. If it's non-functional turf, why do you have it, right? If the only time, and the best way to describe non-functional turf is if the only time you ever step on it is to mow it, it's non-functional.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
So
I see that outside of our office. I see we have a big thing. I'm like, it never gets used other than mowing it. It never really gets used, and it doesn't. It's not necessary. When I'd rather see that the golf course has the greenery of the water because that seems to help with the economy, seems to help with the green space, the air quality, all that stuff kind of gets absorbed by that versus just a lawn out front of a business complex.
Well, and some people say, well, that brings down the temperature and stuff. And you say, you're right. We don't want to become a heat bubble like Tucson, Arizona, or other places that just went to zero scaping
and just concrete everywhere.
And it just becomes hot, right? So we want plants. So part of those ordinances that the cities put in place was that they not only restricted the amount of grass. You can still have grass, but it's just got to be functional size, and it kind of depends on the lot size how much you can have. But it also requires you to have plants, but they're just water-wise plants. So they still shade the ground. We don't have that heat island issue, but they just use so much less water. The Water Conservancy District just rolled out last week a grass buyback program.
I think, I was going to mention that. Okay,
so if you're saying, look, I really don't need this, or AstroTurf has come a long way, right? Maybe I'm good with I want the green and I want the sprawling, but I don't want to have to water it all the time. Wonderful. Contact them right now. It is a rebate program that will help you buy to rip out the grass, and you can put in whatever you want, but it's to reduce that water consumption. So conservation is a big part of it.
And we did that. We had 4 dogs on a I think it's maybe a 30 by 30 yard, and we put synthetic. It's been amazing. It really has been amazing. Just because odor control is better. It's easier to pick up the remnants. It's easier to the dog poop. If we can say poop. I guess it's my show.
It's your show. I think
do whatever I want. So it was something where we did like it, and it actually worked out really better, and it stays cleaner, and it stays green all year round, no matter what. I mean, it's just it worked out great for us. So we did the same kind of thing. There's no mowing. Yep.
My wife is seriously considering part of our yard for that. So,
yep.
So we can things like water reuse pumps, right? So, recirculation pumps. Okay. So in new construction. So again, we're not forcing old homes. This is only for new construction. Nobody's saying we're going to come in and force you to rip out your lawn right now.
Yeah, it's rebates.
It's if you wanted to. Let's encourage you some financial incentive to do so, right? And most of that was coming from some state money, and they were able to work it out that way. So the recirculation pumps on new construction, builders were fine with it because, again, they need this to continue going, right?
Right.
So when the recirculation pump happens, when you go to the faucet and everybody turns on the hot water and then you let it run and you go brush your teeth or whatever, oh, yeah, that's been hot for a little bit. Because you're waiting for the cold line, the water that was hot, cooled in the pipes while it sat there and nobody was using it. And you got to push that out before the hot water comes in.
Right.
10,000 gallons per year per home.
Wow.
Is what we waste. Waiting for the hot water.
Waiting for hot water, yeah.
So instead of doing that, you hit the button that circulates that water. It doesn't lose it.
Yeah.
It just circulates it in the pipe again. Then you turn on hot water and it's instantly hot.
Yeah.
10,000 gallons per home. So we implemented that. The grass size restrictions, requiring more water-wise landscaping. But then we really, the double piping for the secondary and reuse water so that we can use that outside the home where you don't need the culinary. And so that buys us a lot of time on water. The problem is that we can treat all this water, and where do you put it? And that's where we're behind the 8 ball on this one. So we've got 4 new reservoirs going in right now.
Okay.
Tokerville, which is actually being built, more on the infrastructure side of it right now. You'll see more of the dirt being built. And that's more culinary actually, but that's an important part of the piece. So Tokerville Reservoir, if you've driven to Cedar City, right at the top of the Black Ridge, there's sometimes water in that little Ash Creek Reservoir.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes not. That's actually not supposed to be there. That was kind of built when I-15 was built, and all of a sudden it made a dam.
Okay.
So they're pulling that, and it just kind of seeps in and just disappears.
Yeah.
So they're pulling that down into the system as well, and so we're trying to recapture every drop we can. Dry wash and graveyard wash in Santa Clara and Ivins. And then the biggest one will be Warner Valley.
Warner Valley, yeah.
And that one, we just overcame a big hurdle that we've been working on. So we're happy right now. Things are still moving forward in the federal process. But all of this takes time. So I started off, there's a reason why I brought up Los Angeles stealing a river. We can't do that anymore. And they probably shouldn't do that either, right? But they did.
Okay.
But that was 100 years ago. Things just take time. America used to do really cool stuff, and now it takes us a lot longer to do cool stuff. And we just don't do anymore because of federal regulation, and honestly, it's too much of that. But that's the world that we live in right now. And so it takes a long time for some of these things to move forward. So in 3 years, you'll still hear me talking about when Warner Valley comes online. But it's not a small reservoir. It'll be bigger than Sand Hollow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Comparable, but even then a little bit bigger. It's kind of a long dog leg, so you'll be able to boat and recreate on it. It'll be great, but it will be treated secondary water that will be mixing with some of the Virgin River water, putting that in there and storing it. We can treat all this water right now, but we have nowhere to put it. So when you talk about the golf courses and the parks that are watering in the middle of the afternoon, part of it is because what else are you going to do with that water? Otherwise, we're sending it down to Lake Mead. And so if we're going to water, it's not the best time to do it, but there's literally nothing else to do with that water right now. So we're going to water the golf courses or the parks or the school. I mean, schools are a huge user of water. So, so when we can store water, we treat it, we store it, we can use it differently than we're using it now. But we haven't had that option because we had nowhere to store it, and we didn't have the double, irrigation lines separate from the culinary lines and everything. As all of that is now coming online, we're as we implement that aggressively, trying conservation, the reuse, the different ways to try and conserve water in your own home and in your own business, and then looking at businesses that, if you're a high water use business trying to come in here and you need 4 million gallons of clean water a day, probably not the right time and the right place for you right now. So we're trying to be smart about who we're recruiting, what kind of, the ways that we're using our water. And when we do that, all of those measures together, there's no one silver bullet, but you add all of those measures together, and that buys us quite a bit of time. But again, that only buys us time. Eventually. If
we don't do anything with developing the new stuff, then getting 10 more years of not getting any further. So back to Lake Powell Pipeline, because that's obviously a hot button. If we started today, how long would that project take to bring water to Washington County?
Yeah. So, we've, the state has spent millions of dollars already just on the permitting and trying to get this all done.
I think I've seen 7 different lines of where it's going to go and how it's going to go and where it's, all that stuff.
Yeah. Just in the design, the engineering, some of the initial permitting and everything. Honestly, you probably could have, like I've heard people say, holy cow, $30 million. Bob and I could have had our backhoe out there. We'd have had the pipe in for $30 million. I'd have it in next week. Yeah, it's not that simple.
Oh man.
There's lift stations because you've got, water runs downhill, not uphill. And so we've got to lift it over some hills, by Kanab and then back down. And excuse me, like you said, the reservation in Arizona, we've got some mountains that are in cliffs that are in the way. So it's a little more complex than just digging a hole and dropping some pipe in there. The power that it generates and consumes at the same time. So I don't have a good answer, mainly because it's not up to we are not our masters of our own destiny right now. We we still have to deal with the lower basin states. We have to deal with the upper basin states, Wyoming, Colorado.
If everything lined up, when could you start? Like if you had your dream scenario, say, okay, we could start this project, it would be 5 years or 10, or, I mean, is there kind of...
I would love it to be online in 15 years.
That much longer.
If it could be putting water into Washington County by 2035, I'd be really happy.
Really? Interesting. So it's still that much longer. When did it even get proposed? I mean, I've heard about it since I've been here since 2005.
Decades.
So it's probably one of the longest projects I think I've ever heard of as a city or, a county or a state type project. I don't know if there's anything bigger in the country really that's been talked about, especially when it at least comes to the water side of things. I'm not sure what other water projects are around the West. I mean, the West is always dealing with water where the East is getting rid of it kind of thing. Yeah. So can you think of any other project that really has been talked about in the works than the Lake Powell Pipeline? I definitely can, but
no. And I'll tell you one of the reasons you mentioned that. So like I said, I used to work for Congress, trying to get people to understand this issue. It's a very foreign concept for them many times.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting once with some congressional people from Michigan, and they were saying, okay, so you've got these issues out there, we've got some issues. If you can help us, we'll help you. And we were negotiating, talking, and he goes, we need some help with a river. I said, okay, we need to buy up some land. We got to put in this river. And I'm saying, all right, so where are you bringing the water from? Like, where do you need it to get to? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're dry. And so you need, like, where are you trying to get water to? He goes, we're trying to get water out.
We're trying to get rid of it.
We have too much water. We're trying to get water out. We need to buy this, this land and doze these homes to build this river to funnel. And that's the most foreign concept in the world. And it's like too much water. We've never had that problem other than, a microburst for 20 minutes or something. But
sure.
Constant where we need to build a river to get water out. Yeah, we don't have that problem.
Yeah, the diversion, what they've come up with aqueducts to move it, channel it away back to Mississippi or back to the ocean or wherever. And then, we're always trying to move it back into the cities. So, yeah.
And we've talked about, are there proposals to bring, there was actually a very strong one probably 20 years ago to bring water from Canada just in a pipeline.
Really?
We do it with oil. We do it with other things. Let's just build it. They've got plenty of water. It's a resource that we need. They have it just like the way we move other things, energy, natural gas, water, oil. We move things around.
Freeway systems through, off of Highway 93. Now we got I-15, all that kind of stuff, right? Right.
The permitting to get from Canada to southern Utah.
Oh, man. You're only dealing with a couple states, couple counties, couple cities, not a big deal.
Oh, my goodness. It would be a very difficult thing. I'm not saying it's not worthy. I'm not saying we shouldn't try it. I got a letter last week called the Water Train, where literally it's just big old, liquid containers on a train, and we're just going to bring, but that's some expensive water.
Yeah, look at that and say, that can't be the best way to get water here. They just can't over other options that are there. So outside of Lake Powell, that's a great thing. So we got Lake Powell seems to be the big talking point for the next new use water, because we're not getting, like I said, any more out of Virgin unless we just get blow up a mountain so it moves more clouds this way. I mean, what other solution do you see other than pipeline as a real reasonable next step that's on the horizon? Or is it really, we've got to put all our, not eggs like you said, but we got to put most of our effort into pipeline for Lake Powell?
Yeah, there's a couple other options. That's the cheapest.
Okay.
Even though it's expensive, that is by far the cheapest.
Yeah.
And it's the most reliable because it comes from the most reliable source of water, the Colorado River system, right? I mean, It's Flaming Gorge, but it's that's all part of the same drainage. It's closest. It actually has the fewest hurdles to get over.
And still, you're thinking 15 years.
But there's some big hurdles still.
Yeah.
Everything else would be more expensive, more time consuming, and more difficult.
We usually try to keep about 30 minutes. Hope everybody's enjoying it. I think this is a very relevant topic. Sorry. So I think it's something that I love talking about as well, because I love talking about the area. I love helping people know and understand what's out there, because it's amazing how a narrative on politics or religion or sports that just gets out of control. And it seems like water's one of those. Like you said, there's a spectrum of, we're not worried enough and we're worried way too much. It seems like it has moved this way a little more than it needs to. So the idea is to try to dial it back to where it really is, where the truth really lies. Yep. What's the next big domino that needs to fall for Lake Powell? Like if you said, okay, we've got all these hurdles to jump through, what's the one that's kind of just doesn't want to fall that doesn't let the other one start to fall? Is there kind of, what's the next one?
So we were actually fairly close under the Trump administration. And I don't want to ever sound like this is all me. There are Zach Renstrom, who's the manager of the Water Conservancy District, other members of Congress. I was just one piece of it, right? The county, the cities, like there's been a lot of people. The state has been very
The state's got to be
Brian
big,
Steed, who was the in the federal government at the time. I mean, we've had a lot of really good partners, and at the time we were actually quite close to getting over some big hurdles. But I actually think, in all fairness, several of the states said, why are we allowing you to do this? Which we're going to have to change some rules for you to move water from the upper basin, Flaming Gorge, to the lower basin, St. George. Why are we letting you do this when you're not treating every drop of water as sacred as you should? And I think that was a fair critique. And that was our own administration. That was a friendly administration at the time telling us that. And then we're going, okay. And that's why we really started looking much more robust much more in depth at the robust measures we can take for conservation, for storage, for treatment, rather than just saying, hey, bring some more water in.
And keep using it the way we're using it,
Let's use it differently.
And that's where I think Vegas has done an incredible job of the technology it takes also to capture and reuse and stuff like that is really advanced.
It is. And so, but it takes all of us on this. It is not, my neighbors need to stop using so much water. You drive around, we're in December. Drive around, and I guarantee you, if you will open your eyes at night, you'll see sprinklers still on people's lawns. And it's like, why are you watering when it was 19 degrees when I got in my truck this morning?
Yeah.
I don't live in downtown St. George, but still,
right.
It was cold. Yeah. There's no reason. That grass is dormant.
Yep.
Why are you watering it?
Yeah.
When you see your neighbor's sprinklers in the summer hitting the concrete, or don't worry about your neighbors. If your sprinklers are hitting the concrete, no matter how much you water, it's never going to grow. So quit watering the concrete and the sidewalks. It doesn't help. Right.
It's so easy to fix it. Or then you'll see a sprinkler head broken for a long time where it just goes. It's like, wow, those are easy little fixes, like you said.
Yeah.
So you got to look at yourself. What can you do also on top of what it makes sense? Because, is that just because people come from other areas where they don't have to worry? Because we do have a lot of people that have moved to the West from other areas, or even California. California has been a big driver of our economy. When I've seen a lot of requests were coming in from those areas, but I guess they can just use water as well. But northern Utah, I think people up there seem to use water more, and they're still in the same kind of boat we are. But it's like, there's a lot of people that move to the area that don't realize how much they need to do a little better job with the water.
And I think they think of it, it's an annoyance. I got to dig the thing out. If I don't know how to fix the sprinkler head myself, I got to
hire somebody to hire.
It's just. And how much is it really affecting? And honestly, it affects a ton. So last year, and we are in a drought, right? It's just true. We're in a drought. You can look at precipitation levels. We're hoping, praying that it'll end and we can get back to more of a normal water cycle. But last year, in the worst part of the drought that we had been in, Washington County residents saved 400 million gallons of water while growing 5%.
Wow. Yeah.
So we did our part, right? But it was because Bob fixed the sprinkler head, right?
Yeah.
And Tracy made sure that the sprinklers weren't watering onto the concrete, and that your kids weren't just spraying hoses all day, all afternoon, washing. Like, we did things to try and improve how we're using our water. Car washes. Oh, we're putting in another car wash, which we have a plethora of car washes.
Yeah, especially lately.
With the right technology, car washes use far less water than you'll use in your own driveway.
That's so true. That's a great point, because they're able to recapture that water that is going back into the thing, refilter it, and run it back through the same system.
Way more efficient.
And like I said, you're not taking a wash in that water most of the time, especially when it's been reused by the car soaps and the other solvents and stuff, because they're trying to capture that as well before it goes into the sewer system. So
there's lots of things that
How about cookie shops? How much cookie shops do we need in St. George, and how much water does a cookie shop use? Probably more than a car wash.
Probably that, or,
I guess
or
milk.
another soda,
milk or
another soda factory.
Oh, soda shops, yeah.
We've got a few of those too. But there's things that we can all do. We all need to take a honest look at ourselves and say, how can I save water a little bit better? How can I stop wasting? And then realize that there is not only just a plan, but a plan that has been in the works. And you have some very smart people that are very dedicated. They could make a lot more money doing other things, that just really do honestly care, and they're bringing their expertise to bear on this. Very smart engineers. Like I said, Zach Renstrom, I have the utmost respect for, and we're always looking for new things. Some people say drill deeper. There's not any proven massive aquifer that we're sitting on that's just a little bit deeper. We've had, oil wells and stuff that were drilled and we didn't hit anything. Sometimes we've hit some, some deep water, some primary water, they call it. There have been some pockets, high dissolved solids.
I was going to say, how usable is that? Yeah.
Potempe Hot Springs next to Hurricane Leverrican, that's deep water. It comes out very hot. It puts 80,000 tons of salt into the Colorado River system every year. So it's a lot of salt.
Yeah.
So you can't really use it for much. But we're actually even working on things with that. So it's not to say that there aren't other sources. Zach is working on some drilling along the Hurricane Fault Line to see, hey, maybe there is some deeper water in here. Let's try it. So we are looking at all of the above solution, but we do have things that are in the works, that are in place, even moving dirt and building infrastructure today. And that's how we expand that margin from where we're at to where we need to be. And then we just keep looking for additional sources and working with that. The short answer to your question a second ago is, what's the next big hurdle? Working with the other states. We're renewing the Colorado River Compact.
Well, that's an undertaking, huh?
That's an undertaking.
Is California just going to get all of it? Is it just going to just shut everybody off and California's just going to get all of it? No.
And even under this administration where you would think that would probably be, they've been quite tough on California.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we've got some hope.
That's the conversation. So we went a little longer for the show, but I think this is such a relevant topic. I think it's really important to know that like you said, we're in a good position, especially existing homes, that we've done a better job capturing the water that we are using, that we are actively looking for other sources. And it's not like St. George is drying up anytime soon, but it is something where it's still something we got to be aware of. We can't just bury our head in the sand, but at the same time, we can't just cap it. Like you said, I think there's got always something in between those two solutions. So, appreciate your time. This is Adam Stone. He's the county commissioner. This is the Clear to Close podcast. So appreciate your time watching. Please click and subscribe. We got other shows coming up, other guests. If you have comments, questions, or concern, please post those. We'll get to those questions later. But this was the Clear to Close podcast. See you next time.